Yes, you could go in blindly into The Crow 2024, say fuck the reviews, or ignore them, or stay off Twitter, stay off wherever you gotta stay off of. Go into it, but the high probability of you regretting watching this movie, giving it time to cook, to build, to elaborate, to flesh out, and to finish, is what you'll regret the most because it's bad. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. Now listen, 1994's version, by no means am I going to say it's a classic, it's the godfather of goth films, or anything of that sorts. I enjoy it. I'll gladly rewatch it whenever, the occasion arises, maybe on Halloween or something like that. As cheesy as that sounds, I may do it. But I enjoyed watching it. And since watching it for the first time in this year, 2024, it was like on my to watch list forever. So I finally got around to it. After finally sitting my ass down and watching it, I've been able to really enjoy it every time I watch it. It's straightforward. It knows what it's going for, and also it's got a leading man in Brandon Lee, rest in peace, of course, that knows what he's doing with the character. And even though, unfortunately, he died literally while making this movie, and it was still released with him dying on set by accident, of course, it still stands the test of time. Now, I know you say 1994, the special effects, the CGI back when. Come on, how can you fucking compare to 30 years later nowadays or 2024? Well, then, can you explain to me why, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, all the Marvel movies were decent looking enough, like in 2008, 2010, when they first started hitting with like the first Iron Man and Captain America and all them, looked fairly decent and somewhat believable. But now in 2024, years after the initial batch was released, this shit looks faker than ever. I thought we were supposed to advance with time and technology. But no, shit looks even more green screen, even more fucking Bollywood style, at best impressive level type of fucking CGI shit. Marvel's doing that, and they got unlimited funds courtesy of Disney to do so, but they're still fucking it up. But again, The Crow 1994, yes. The one sore point I will say about the original Crow is that the special effects and CGI may not hold up, may look kind of, washed out, blurry compared to today's standards if you're more used to the films of now or more recent times. 2024, I will say, obviously because of the technology available to it now, and I'm sure they had the budget for it to make it look decent, it looks good for the most part. But that doesn't make it good in any way, shape, or form. It still adds on to the bad because if they were able to make the blood, and that's another thing too about this movie, the 2024 version of Crow, The Crow, excuse me. Well, I'll demote The Crow because it's practically a bunch of crow as in shit. It should not be called The Crow because then you're going to confuse with something actually good like 1994's version. So 2004's Crow, 2024's Crow, excuse me. They had 30 years. If it was 2004, I'd forgive them if they only had 10 years to try to slap something together, get a cast, make it work somehow. Oh, for a new, younger audience and generation never saw the first one. Here's a brand new one for the 2000s, new millennium and shit, right? 10 years I'd understand if it was a sloppy job. But 30 years later, you had the tall, very tall task of remaking this shit with a whole new cast, because if Brandon Lee would have been still alive, he would have been way too old to be the Crow, obviously. Let's not debate Father Time here. But they had 30 years to come up with something decent. And there's a reason why 2024's Crow was stuck in production hell, as I read in various different sites, for the longest time. There's been sequels, yes, I'm aware. There's been sequels of the original Crow that had different people involved. I think the third one, if anything, might have had, who was it? Kirsten Dunst, I think. She was in one of them. Not the second one, I think the third one. After the fucking, the very first one from 1994. So like the 2000s around that time. I never got around to watching any of the sequels because obviously I never watched the first Crow. So I was like, what am I going to do watching the sequels when I could tell already by the cover art and who's involved? It's probably bad. Not to say I was like shitting on the first Crow. I was like, I'll get to it eventually, but that eventually took me even 30 years to do so. Mind you, 1994, I was like 10 years old. So there was a theater you can sneak into when I was growing up in Queens, on Steinway, that old theater that's been fucking shut down forever since. I never bothered to figure out how to sneak in for the Crow. It wasn't on my radar like that. Betty had said, but yeah, that's one thing out the way. The CGI, the special effects, sure, it looks good in this one and convincing enough because we've been able to evolve with the times. The movie magic, the special effects and everything too, the blood. The first Crow, 1994, wasn't so bloody. There was enough of it to satisfy your urge and needs of on screen action and blood and violence and shit. And it earns its R rating because it's pretty brutal sometimes, especially how some guys are killed at the hands of Eric. Was it Craven or Draven? I forget his name. I think Craven in the movie. I forget right now. At the hands of Eric. And of course, there is the fact, the one big thing they omitted from this version, I'm guessing because, again, 30 years later, modern times and everything, they omit, well, they do retell the story, Betty had said, of Eric and Shelly, the two leads. In the original, they were killed the night before Halloween, Devil's Night in Detroit. The Crow symbolically can't be at peace if people that died had like wrong done to them, like them two were. They were murdered, and in the case of Shelly, she was raped and beaten to death. On top of that, so the Crow can't stay at peace until justice has been served. Therefore, Eric becomes the Crow, the supernatural superhero goth guy that goes around killing one by one the guys that killed him and his to-be fiance. And then, at the very end, kills the bad guy, obviously, because that's the whole point of, like, being a supernatural superhero like that, right? In this version, they take the romance, they expand on it by actually fleshing out the developing, budding relationship between this Eric, Eric with a K because Bill Skarsgård's, was he Swedish, I think? Something like that. Eric with a K and Shelly meet in all places at a rehab center because they're both, well, I'm not going to say both junkies, but they're not strangers to drugs, the hard shit too, which, some people find entertaining and engaging to like just take random pills unmarked, who knows where it came from, who knows who made it, shooting up all these things and snorting up all these powders randomly just for the sake of fucking getting lit, litty to titty, having fun, living life, young, wild, and free, all that shit, etc., right? They expand on their relationship. We get to see how it develops and leads to their death, both of them, Eric and Shelly, because Shelly, and this was confusing at first because you had to really watch, and it wasn't until almost the end when you realize, well, why the fuck are they so obsessed, the bad guys in this case, why are they so obsessed with killing Shelly and by association Eric, because that's the boyfriend, right? They get killed because Shelly killed someone while being possessed by the devil or a demon or whatever. She goes, snake-eyed, kind of like fucking, what's his name? The Undertaker, excuse me. Rolls her eyes into the back of her head after getting, talked into her ear by a demon and starts stabbing a girl to death. And they have that on video. So because they got a hold of the video, as well as the guy talking to her that whispered in the ear to make her kill the other girl, that video is compromising to the bad guy, the main bad guy, who's very boring, very dull, poorly dialogued, poorly acted. This guy was fucking phoning it in. And that's not to say necessarily he's a bad actor, but I don't really see him, I don't see it in his face or his acting range to have been capable of really taking this bad guy, main villain character beyond the blandness of what we got throughout the whole film with him. He was boring as shit and easily disposed of at the end too. But this video is really what compromises Shelly to the point where her and Eric get killed and murdered. And of course, just like the first one, Eric dies. He goes to like some realm in between heaven and hell, or earth and hell, whatever, and gets talked to, this version of Eric, gets talked to by a guy with a really heavy, funny ass, stupid ass accent that also does a bad job of acting talks to him, lectures him on what happens, the crow, symbolically, if there's justice to be served, then or revenge to be served as well. You take the powers of the crow. You go back to the living. You get revenge, and only once you're done can you actually rest in peace. As you should, with mission accomplished, done, and everything, justice served, right? He goes into really over explaining that shit like we're stupid almost, like we didn't see the first one, or if you didn't too, you still kind of feel insulted the way they kind of take you by the hand and say, well, this happens, and then that happens, and then that happens, and then that happens. Like dominoes just falling down, and you're just watching to make sure you get to the end. But you know the end result, basically. They do that. He gets the powers. You go throughout the film with Eric just getting revenge, killing one by one. And that's the thing that bothered me too about this one. So again, the 1994 version earned its R rating. No question there. But was it overly bloody, gory, disgusting? I wouldn't say so. Then again, that's just my palate of taste. That's my standards, where it wasn't disgusting at all to me. There's been worse stuff I've watched, and more disgusting and or more, kind of thing when you watch it. This is kind of edging towards that line of, whoa, that's a little too much. Not as in I'm offended that's too much, but it's way too much to make up for a weak script, a weak cast, and a weak premise overall. No sense of real direction besides like it's kind of ping-ponging all over the place with what it wants to get done or accomplished, while not so much paying homage to the first one, which they didn't have to. I mean, I can totally respect a reboot, as in this case, doing and being its own thing. I commend them on that premise alone, because it's retelling the story in a different way. In the first one, Eric does all that he does as the Crow, kills everybody one by one, and gets revenge on the bad guy so he can finally lay himself to rest, die, and be with Shelly in the afterlife. That's the whole premise of the first one. That's his whole MO for the first one, right? This one instead, what they do, and I think could have worked had they actually committed to that end goal, but actually flesh out everything leading up to it, is Eric and Shelly die, right? Because of Shelly's fault. So the guy that lectures Eric about the Crow tells him that because of what she did, even though she was possessed, so she didn't do it herself, she was like unwillingly doing shit that the demon whisperer, groupie guy whispered into her ear, some satanic, blah, 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 and convinced her to do it in a blind rage. He says that she's stuck in a part of hell, not even hell, but it's a part of like the other realm and shit that no one ever wants to go to, and she's going to be burning forever pretty much because of what she did. Meanwhile, the bad guy is like a demon channeler, groupie, fucking obsessed with Satan and shit, and talks all this satanic shit into people's ears and turns them into mindless slaves where all they do is either kill themselves or kill others until they commit something purely evil, I believe, as someone described at some point too. But also, when this Eric becomes the Crow, his end goal is to really get revenge. Obviously, that's the same thing as the first one. But then, when he's, what did he say? What did the guy say? The funny accent guy said something about, oh, you did end up dying because your heart wasn't pure. You weren't killing for love, you were killing just to get revenge or something like that. So now you have to die. And because you died, well, you're done as the Crow. So you can't do anything anymore for yourself or Shelly. Then he says, oh, fine, then I'll give up my soul in exchange for hers so she can come back to life because she's dead at this point, right? The guy with the Crow 101 lecturing agrees. They make a blood oath with black blood. His eyes turn black. He starts getting like black goth makeup on his face from his eyes leaking. And he becomes a Crow again, but now even more invincible than before. So at the end of this version of the Crow, he does die, obviously, as he did in the first one, but that was his whole mission. Let me kill everybody so that I can die and rest in peace and be with my soulmate for the rest of eternity, and finally be with each other as we always wanted to, versus this one where, okay, I died, I fucked up, and I'm having doubts about my one true love who did do something fucked up, but it wasn't her legitimately doing, she was possessed to do it. But I'm giving up my soul for hers so that she's dead, she comes back to life, but in exchange, I die and drop dead, and I'm out of the picture completely. So it's a little entangled, it's a little messed up, it's a little muddled as far as what it wants to get accomplished and or done. That's how I feel about it. I think the premise could have worked had, again, they had better acting, a more fleshed out script, dialogue that made sense, and not focus so much on overly bloody violence, which I'll admit, the one other key point, besides Bill Skarsgård, he's on and off good and bad, for me, at least throughout the film. But I like him in general. The other high point, and the only other high point in the movie at all, is the action sequences, which you do get plenty of in the original Crow. But they're nowhere near as bloody, as violent, or, dare I say, even cool looking as they are in this one. There's a couple of times he's like, getting approached by bad guys, the random goons that come to like his apartment, his friend's apartment, start blasting at him. As the Crow, a supernatural superhero, he's like invulnerable to damage. He can't be killed. He heals up automatically. He's like Wolverine with like the healing factor and shit. But the first Eric from 1994, Brandon Lee, obviously, yeah, in real life he was a martial artist, as would be the son of Bruce Lee, obviously. And shoutouts to that, he was really good choreography wise in the 1994 Crow. That Eric was able to fight very well, defend himself, use weapons, adapt immediately, all that shit. So he was disposing motherfuckers, left, right, like that, in the blink of an eye. So that's what makes it cool. In this one, however, this Eric, for whatever reason, it's almost unfair because, or bittersweet, the deal he made, because he does become the Crow, implying that he's invulnerable, can't be killed, but he gets that in exchange for not being able to fight for shit, because he's getting fucked up left and right. They get the drop on him, they're blasting at him, they're fucking punching him silly, they're slapping him around, they're grabbing him by the dick and slapping his ass and shit, just making him look like a whole fucking clown, getting beat up from the windows to the walls. Only because he's got invulnerability. He can't be killed. That's the only reason he's in the game for so long until the very end and makes it to the final boss, pretty much. Because if he didn't have the invincibility code turned on the whole fucking time as the Crow, he would have been dead in the first fight. The first time, the first couple of goons would have just shot him in the fucking chest, right? But he's able to fucking come back to life. He's able to spit out the bullets through his body, recouping himself and all that. He's got to slap motherfuckers. He's got to poke eyes and shit. He's got to fight dirty just to stay alive so they don't kill him. Or if they do, which would normally kill him, getting shot and stabbed to death, he's able to deflect that shit and still get, the W on him, even though it's a very, it's a very muddled W, like a W with an asterisk, like, kind of like a TKO instead of a straight up KO, basically is what I'm saying. He's a very terrible fighter. He can't handle himself. He's just very lucky he's got the invincibility code on the whole fucking time in this 2024 Crow movie. That bothered me a little bit only because, of course, he's not going to automatically become, this trained in 13, 20 different martial arts type of expert overnight just because he becomes a Crow. But he's getting fucked up a lot of times throughout this thing. He's getting manhandled a lot of times throughout this thing. And just because he can fucking eat bullets, he can live through stabbings, he gets run over by an 18-wheeler, half his leg pops out his fucking socket and shit. He's able to pop it back in. He's able to survive everything. It's almost unfair. Like, because imagine you got that deal approached. You got approached with that deal, I mean to say. You can be invulnerable. You can be invincible. Take no fucking damage. And even if you do, you'll just automatically recoup and recover like Wolverine with the healing factor. But you're going to absolutely be shit at fighting. You can't defend yourself. Not that you can't, but you don't know how to defend yourself properly, you're gonna have to fucking poke eyes and scratch faces and twist nuts just to fucking have a fighting chance, but you won't know how to fight for shit. It almost seems like I wouldn't take that deal. I just wear some body armor, go into action and pray in advance that, I can dodge bullets in real time like some Matrix shit or something. At least, whoo, 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 skirt past them. It seems like to me they were trying to go for, crossing their fingers, hoping and praying to God or whatever they believe in, that this would do so well that it would merit a sequel. Or at least recoup its money and then some to cover the cost of, making the shit, marketing, promoting, all that. And be like, hey, in 2 years from now, something like that, you'll get the Crow 2, Revenge, or something like that. Because now the whole point of Crow 2024 is that when Shelly comes back to life at the very end, she's left to live her life, I believe, with the memory of Eric and the time they had together. But obviously, he's not there with her because he's got to stay dead. Because he said, you take my soul, give her soul back to her so she can live. And I'll live in the in between fucking middle ground of, I guess, Earth and Hell. And be like the NetherRealm Punisher supernatural guy like that. Bringing justice whenever I have to, or I'll make house calls to Earth whenever I gotta dispose of some foes, but then I gotta go right back. Pretty much to, the middle ground where I occupy now as the otherworld Punisher, supernatural Punisher, something like that. I felt that's what they were going for because he was pretty much doing the walk off of the superhero. I can't be with anybody. Nobody can be with me. I can't have family, friends, a wife, steady pussy, nothing like that. I gotta walk my own path, where I lay my hat as my home kind of thing, or like a Rolling Stone shit, and just go about his business as the Crow, the protector of the fucking realms outside of heaven and hell and earth and whatever else you want to fucking throw into the mix, basically. I get that feeling. But they failed miserably with this one on all levels, as I mentioned. Now, I will give you an example of why, as I promised. So, an example of bad acting. Let me tell you something. I don't know how or if they actually had animals involved in this shit. Obviously, with crows, they were all around, but I get a feeling most of them were CGI'd and maybe one or two were actual crows. Unlike the first Crow movie that had actual ravens, not crows. So, fun fact right there, if you want to watch that review too, again, as I mentioned, I do touch on that it was actually ravens they used, trained ravens on set instead of actual crows, because ravens are, bigger, more imposing, and they look the part more than actual crows who are smaller but look exactly like them otherwise. So, a bunch of CGI crows, or maybe ravens, I don't know. In this case, animals, right? The opening part of this 2024 Crow is him. This is where I get this is the side of a bad movie because there's no explanation as to why they depict Eric as a young child who looks drastically different from his adult, grown, transitioning into the Crow version. Why, as a child, he lives, it seems like, in a trailer park, but a trailer park where they have horses too. I don't know if it was a wild horse that was just like roaming around like meh, whatever, or his own horse, but it was a big white horse that he's running to because he sees that it got trapped in some barbed wire. It's got it sunk deep into its side, and I guess he just felt the urge to grab the barbed wire with his bare hands, young Eric, and pull it out of the horse, but too little too late because the horse dies anyways. But the way the horse dies is so funny and stupid because they only show the head of the horse, right? When Eric already pulled out the barbed wire, he like cut through his hands and shit, and he couldn't save the horse, obviously. There's a moment where the horse's head looks up at him, makes eye contact, and then just plops, dies, drops dead right there. But it was so sudden and so dramatic that it seemed like acting 101. Die right now, however, which way you can, the best you can. So that's bad acting right there from the fucking start, and not even from one of the human actors. If that was a real horse, that's a pretty stupid horse right there. Or the horse wasn't fed properly and didn't know what the fuck to do, or poorly trained to method act. I don't know. Tell a horse to pretend to be a dying horse. Shelly, or formerly known as Twigs. Um, she's pretty hard to watch and listen to throughout the whole thing. That's not me trying to pick on her because I I don't even I can't even say I wanted to like her, but it's more like it's very hard to tolerate her for the almost 2 hours throughout the film. And thank God she's not there the entire time. It's mostly this guy Eric, or Bill Skarsgård, better yet said. She's hard to listen to. She's hard to watch. She doesn't know how to deliver lines. She doesn't know how to hit emphasis on or deliver properly on what she's supposed to say. Her accent doesn't help either. So I don't know where the fuck they met. If they met in England, if they met in the States and she's from England, born and raised, but came to the States just to go to rehab to meet another fucking junkie, get together, fuck, do all sorts of drugs together, and compromise herself with a guy who's like a demon whisperer who whispered into her ear randomly one night while getting high, causing her to stab another girl to death, get that on tape or on someone's phone footage, compromising the guy that talked into her fucking ear to make her do it in the first place, leading to her and him having to die because of her fucking shortcomings as a human being and giving into the fucking demonic shit. She could have said, I'm not into that shit, blah, 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 whatever. But probably under the influence of drugs, she thought it made sense. Demon's talking to me, demon got me. And just fucking stab, 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 stab. But throughout the whole time, and a perfect example of her overacting and not being able to act properly. Listen, I know I'm no actor. You're probably not an actor either. But I'm sure even we could do a better job of dying at the hands of somebody putting a plastic bag over our heads to suffocate us to death. Slow and torturous death as it is, this girl is gasping like a fucking fish out of water, but an overacted fish out of water. Because it is some bad, dead acting. There's no way you could be that loud with a plastic bag over your head as you're trying to die on screen. But yet, she does it. She's loud. Going crazy with it. No, that's not how you die. Even with a plastic bag over your head suffocating you and cutting off your circulation to your fucking head. Or your brain, I mean to say. It's just too much. She doesn't know how to do it properly. And then he goes hand in hand with that shit as he's watching her die in front of him. He's doing the same thing, screaming into the bag. And afterwards, when he's got to deal and cope with the loss of Shelly, like, and the first time he meets the guy that teaches him about the crow and the supernatural powers he's gonna inherit, his voice is cracking a lot. Bill Skarsgård, like, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't want to be the crow. Fuck you, man. I'm out of here. I'm getting lost. Get the fuck away from me. Which I get it. You can be distressed. You be caught up in the moment. You can be like, well, woe was me. The love of my life is dead. No, the love of my life was murdered in front of me. And now I got the responsibility of not just protecting her spirit and saving her from the realms of hell that no one even speaks of, but now I got to be the guy that comes back to life and takes revenge on everybody involved in our deaths, just so I can trade my soul for her. She can go on living without me, and hopefully, maybe in the back of her mind, she'll one day remember who the fuck I was. But most likely seems like she won't. I think he said something at the end like, oh, I'll be fine with the memory of what we had, and knowing that maybe, just maybe, one day our spirits, our souls will cross paths once again. And it's either underacting or overacting with her. There's no middle ground. There's nothing where she delivered beautifully, convincingly, nothing. She's just so dry. She's just too much at some point. He's kind of more in the middle ground, Bill Skarsgård or this version of Eric. Not to say he's better, but at least he's like kind of middle ground. He does have his points where his voice is cracking, as I mentioned again, where he's a little too like trying to be stern and serious, but he has an accent. So I'm not saying that the whole shit had to be in Detroit. They all have to sound like American or Anglo or white, but I'm confused as to where this was taking place versus 1994 being in Detroit. But a lot of this was obviously filmed in Europe, I believe Czechoslovakia, or is it the Czech Republic? I forget. Shasta geography, I forget already. It's been too long since I've been to school to remember if it's one or the other. So, no offense and forgive me if I got it wrong. But it was shot in Europe. Bill Skarsgård, I believe, is Swedish, so he's like Eric with a K instead of Eric with a C, like the first Eric in the 1994 Crow. Twigs is British, apparently. Obviously, with that accent and those teeth, no offense, but that's just what it is. And the whole rest of the cast, too. Like, there's one white lady that works underneath the boss, who's very white and very pretty, too. Shouts to her. There's the main guy, who I believe is European of some sorts. Or maybe he did a good job of putting on the accent, which, was really like unpinned on the map type of accent, just like European, sound European. And he did that, so he checked that box off. Good on that. But the rest of him, his dialogue, all that shit, underdelivered. And he was a very weak bad guy. You know, yeah. Again, Bill Skarsgård was okay. Not terrible, not the worst. And at least not the worst actor in the whole thing, which he's the lead. He's the one carrying the whole fucking weight on his shoulders. But he's not the worst actor, at least, throughout the fucking thing. I think that's got to go to Twigs. Or, sorry, formerly known as Twigs. Trash. No good. Unconvincing as a Shelly and or anybody trying to be anybody's love interest. Nice to look at. Cute girl. No denying that. And she does have a nice little singing voice because apparently she was a singer. I think in the first one, Eric was like the member of a band, and that Shelly was like a community activist, like a neighborhood watch kind of girl. But this one, I guess, roles reversed. Like Eric is like just a somber, brooding, lanky, tall, fucking goth boy. But Shelly this time around is the musician, the artist. When she comes back to life at the very end, she's seen performing in front of a crowd, so she's living out her dream. And I guess that's what Eric would want of her at the end, since she's alive now and able to do her thing. But we're left unsure again if she's even going to remember his ass, or maybe he's like wiped from her existence, and maybe, like he said, maybe one day our souls will cross again. Who knows? It's very confusing. Again, as one of the many things about this version of The Crow that seriously just confused the fuck out of me. And again, not the hate, not the shit on it, not to be like, oh, the first Crow was better. Why'd you do it again? Why'd you fucking, belittle a classic film by remaking it and shit, da 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 da. I'm not possessive like that. But if you're gonna do it, or redo it, better yet said, maybe redo it right. Entirely different. Or at least give a shit when you're doing it. Because again, this thing was stuck in production hell for so long. And again, 30 years since the original's release. To do something different with it, maybe even better with it, if I even dare to say that, if that was possible. Or just, retell the story. Or, you could have just said fucking, you know what? No Eric, no Shelly, new characters. But then it had to be like the fourth sequel to the first one, or they could just reboot it with just entirely new characters also. I think maybe that could have been better in that sense. Now, we talked about the acting. If you sit down and invest or / waste your time watching this thing yourself, you'll see why the acting is bad and why I'm not lying about it or exaggerating. It's painful to sit through. And again, especially, no offense, but straight up, formerly known as Twigs, is not good in this fucking movie. I don't know if she's been in any others. I haven't really bothered to research that, but at least in this one, oh boy, back to acting class for you, please. I insist. I'll even pay for it if I have to, but go back to fucking class and learn, please. Make a different face instead of the same fucking face the whole fucking movie she's doing. Also, the thing about his appearance, Bill Skarsgård, or / Eric in this film, he's got a lot of tattoos for nothing. I'm not opposed to tattoos at all. I respect it, but I do like well-placed and well-merited tattoos. Not just like the trend now. Like, that one girl from the Olympics from Poland. I think she was a runner of some sorts. Attractive, great ass on her. But what turned me off, honestly, was the leg full of tattoos she had, which she put no effort into thinking of what she's putting on the body. She just got drunk one night, had enough cash on hand and said, you know what? You pick what the fuck you want to put on this whole leg right here, and I'll just fuck with it. I'll rock with it. It's lazy, artwork on your body. I mean, every tattoo piece you do doesn't have to be super elaborate either, but at least make it look like you put some effort or you had some brain cells functioning, kicking in your brain enough to pick something that looks worthwhile. Like, okay, what's the story behind that? Instead, it just looks like she let a 5-year-old go crazy with like tattoo ink pen, whatever, and just go crazy on a fucking thigh. They overdid it with the tattoos on him. I get it. He's, a kid from rehab. He's a troubled kid. He witnessed his horse dying in front of him at a young age. So how bad was life for him if he had a horse at such a young age? Even if he lived in a trailer, still, that wouldn't be too bad. Like, you live in a trailer, but you have a horse. Maybe at some point sell the horse, get a bigger trailer, or maybe buy a house, but or at least down payment with the horse. Use the horse as a down payment after selling it to get a house. I mean to say, but yeah, he had too many tattoos on him. Not to say it's the worst thing ever, but it just it reminded me so much of when they gave you the first look of the 2016 Suicide Squad film, and with Jared Leto, who was a terrible Joker, by the way, and still is the worst ever to do Joker, had all these tattoos on him for no fucking reason. That obviously the Joker's not a real person, thank God, because that'd be scary enough to think about that. But got all these nonsensical ass, non-applicable ass tattoos that make no sense, didn't make him scarier, didn't make him cooler, nothing. It just made him look stupider. But of course, it's Jared Leto, so I'm not a fan. I think he's overrated, and I don't like anything he does. Music, movies, nothing. I don't fuck with Jared Leto at all. And I'm not going with the allegations of him being like into younger girls, allegedly, of course, as they say. I'm not basing it off of that either. Just, I don't like any of his work. I'm not a fan. I don't enjoy seeing or listening to him. If I was a woman, if I had a pussy, I might at least tolerate looking at him, because good looking guy. But he practically looks so good, he looks like a girl. He's so pretty, he might as well be a girl. But whatever, that's Jared Leto talk. We don't need to get too much into that either. I did enough just now. There was a part, though, when he finally becomes the Crow and gets the black blood from the guy that teaches him about being a crow and the Netherrealm shit, where he goes to his friend's tattoo shop, or his tattoo setup, whatever. I think it was in his apartment. Goes there and takes the tattoo ink and just starts smearing it on his face. Now, I don't know if because there was no ink, like pen involved, if it's permanent or not, but it's just smudged all over his face, connecting to his mouth, from his eyes. He looks like a clown. He looks like a clown that, got caught out there in a midsummer's day, and the shit is melting before the end of the shifts, for him that day. It looks ridiculous. It doesn't come off, to me at least, like evil, gothy, dooming, or imposing like that. It just comes off like lazy. But I would hate to think that could become the next tattoo trend. Now, I know a lot of people in general, apparently from the numbers online and shit, and the money, it's little to no money it's made back, this fucking movie. I don't think it will have a huge audience, but it may just capture enough of an audience that finds that appealing to be like, you know what? I already got my shit tattooed above my eyebrows, in the middle of my forehead. I got my dick tatted up too. Why not just go all out? Just tell the guy, grab some ink, smear it on my face, and just zzz it all in. So I can look like an emo clown, basically. I'm afraid that's the trend, because now, listen, we've gotten to the point where people, for some reason, and I will criticize this and I will judge this, I'm sorry. Not tattoos in general, but I will criticize those that get the inner lip tattooed. That I don't get at all. I really don't understand or comprehend what the logic is in that. Who's gonna know about that tattoo ever besides you and anyone else you should go like this to so they can see it? What's it good for? I can't imagine the level of pain, first off, you gotta tolerate to get your inner lip tattooed. Something random. You gotta make sure it's like it's written in the way that someone can read it instead of reverse, where only you could read it, and if your bottom lip is long enough or big enough, you could stretch it out and see what the fuck you did. But then it's always hidden. You had to purposely stick your whole shit out just for somebody to see it. It makes no sense to me. You do your face, you do your ass, you do your tits, your pussy, it doesn't matter. I guess whatever, at some point it'll be on display. And you know, people, you know what bothers me too a lot with tattoos, now that I'm touching on it, is the people that year round will purposely wear shorts and or short sleeves or roll, or worse, roll up the sleeves or whatever they're wearing to show off the tattoos. If you're proud of your tattoos, let them be a surprise for the rest of us. Don't fucking. It's not like I'm being forced to look at somebody's tattoos or I'm so offended or I'm being, you know, hoity toity about it either. But it's like, let us discover the tattoos. Don't be such a fucking prick and put it on prominent display like everyone's got to be fascinated. Everyone's got to be fucking, oh my God, this person's tattooed, they're badass. They live their life on their own terms. No one's telling them what to do ever. They're their own boss, most likely, and shit. No one fucking cares. And no one's impressed either. So enough with that shit, please. I don't know if anyone's gonna ever fucking listen to me, but I'm just saying, enough with that shit. No one gives a fuck. Something that may be looked upon as, oh, but there was at least that one good part where da 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 da, just like in Batman vs Superman. Not horrible, but not good either. But at least they had that Batman warehouse scene for Ben Affleck, and shouts to Ben Affleck for now being newly divorced from Jennifer Lopez after 2 years, and already hooking back up with Jennifer Garner. And I'm sorry, I hate to sound any certain way when I say this, but the better of the Jennifers won Ben Affleck back. Jennifer Garner, she's a piece of ass too. I mean, everybody's focused on 55-year-old J-Lo looking incredible and in the gym and doing the squats, obviously, and looking incredible as she does, no doubt in that. But let's not fucking sleep on Jennifer Garner. I love to sleep with Jennifer Garner, but you know, I can't say that no more because now she's back with Ben. So I'm saying respectfully, I wish I would have had the chance if ever afforded to me. But Jennifer Garner versus Jennifer Lopez, I'm taking Jennifer Garner. That's all I'm saying. But just like he had his Batman Arkham Asylum style warehouse fight scene in Batman vs Superman, the one part I'll always go back to on YouTube, the reference to watch because it was so cool and beautifully executed. I'm not going to put it in that category, but at least the one good part I would re-watch on YouTube once this shit makes it on the fucking internet like that, which probably it'll be in no time soon, will be the part where Eric is the Crow after getting the black blood put in him, and now he's like double invincible and shit. He goes into an opera house and kills all the security guys to finally get to the lady that gave the order to kill Shelly and him, and the main bad guy who's at the opera house watching, you know, opera. Obviously, he's a high cultured fuck like that, but an underground crime boss, whatever, and possessed by demons on top of that too. Demon whisperer, I mean to say. He goes into the opera house, he's killing left and right, it's gory, it's bloody, arms are flying off, he puts a sword in some guy's mouth and just fucking like detaches his jaw from the rest of his skull. It's highly detailed, it's graphic, blood's everywhere possible, smeared, everyone's getting stabbed or shot, torn apart, cut up like a fucking butcher shop. And I will say this, at least for the first time watching it, and probably the only time because I don't know if I'm watching this shit ever again, it was cool. And it was also cleverly set to the opera performance going on. So they cut back, you know, from the opera performance on the main stage to him just going crazy on the guys outside and protecting the fucking main boss and shit, back and forth. And it's set to the fucking score of the opera, where he's killing literally everybody, just stacking, piling up bodies, until he gets to the lady and then the boss back in the mansion and shit. And then before he kills her, he makes her give up the deets on where the fucking main bad guy is because he got the scoop that, oh shit, someone's here to kill me. Let me get the fuck up out of here, and goes back to his mansion to sit in his fucking fancy robe and brush his hair like a bitch would at night with a humongous like wraparound vanity mirror in his room, waiting for the crow to come and get him. And basically, try to kill him, but then, like, aha, surprise. I talk to demons, so I got more power than you, fool. Whispering to his fucking ear, and he's like, he doesn't get possessed, I guess because of his powers, Eric. He's like just kind of stunned or paralyzed momentarily because he's able to shake it off and stab his ass to death. Sorry, no, he doesn't stab him yet. No, he does stab him at some point, I think, or cuts him, but he throws him through the vanity mirror that leads into the other realm where the guy that teaches him how to beat a crow is at. And there they have their final battle, which is like really underwhelming. Basically, they just punch each other a couple times. He swoops in on him. He puts the guy into this puddle of water, which turns black, which is possessed by demons apparently. And then, demon got him literally, or demons got him and tear away at the fucking bad guy and consume him, and he's, at the fucking picture. And that's the end of the fucking movie. But the opera house scene where he's going buck wild on everybody there and just chopping, shooting, breaking, curb stomping. He's just guillotining motherfuckers, everything too. It's cool. And it's set to the piece that's playing while the opera's going on. Clever, well directed, but the only highlight in the whole movie, besides Bill Skarsgård's acting being tolerable or acceptable for the most part. It's not great throughout, but it's like mid and shit, and it's like, you can appreciate that. Given the fact that the script is terrible, the premise is stupid, the acting is bad, and just a whole package that is 2024's A Crow, we could have done without this shit for real. We could have just left 1994's intact, even though that had some bad sequels after it. We could have left it alone without 2024's The Crow, starring Bill Skarsgård and formerly known as Twigs. Now, what could I possibly give score-wise to 2024's The Crow? What can I do in this case but be true to my word and say that this is obviously the worst thing I've watched this year in theaters, to my not so surprising but unpleasant surprise regardless, The fucking Crow. It's the worst movie of 2024 in my humble opinion that I've watched in theaters so far. I've streamed everywhere else too. I can't stand the fact that I sat from start to finish through this thing, as horrible, as terrible, as stupid, as pointless, as aimless as it was. And now I gotta rewatch 1994's A Crow just to hopefully get the memory of this one out of my head, if possible. It's like this was a really bad Taco Tuesday, and I'm waking up Wednesday morning to regret it just before I clock into work. That's 2024's A Crow. It is bad. It is abysmal. It is pointless. We didn't fucking need it. And I will, if I gotta fucking go on the internet, if I knew that no one was watching this shit, if I knew that numbers were doing decent enough, or it was making money back in the box office, which it ain't right now, but if it was, I would get off my ass. And I never voted, and I never will. Fuck politics. But in this case, I would start a petition to get this shit out of the fucking theaters. And that's not me being a fanboy again of Brandon Lee, rest in peace, or 1994's A Crow like that because, it came out in the 90s, everything in the 90s is so sacred and GOAT status and nothing. No. This is bad. I don't care who the fuck you are, how much you like gore, how much you like goth shit, anything. This is bad. This is a bad fucking movie. There was no reason for this to be made, and there's no reason for 30 years is what they had to remake this shit, reimagine it, whatever, and they failed. No wonder it was stuck in production hell for so long, and they passed from director to director to director to cast to cast to cast until they finally said, you know what, fuck it. It's been on the back burner long enough, let's put it out. Here it is, The Crow, everybody, the new one for 2024. It fucking sucks. And I'm mad I had to fucking watch it. But, I had to because I love the first one so much. I was just curious. I had to, cure that itch of what are they going to do in 2024? Why did they redo this movie? Exactly. Super Nitro, exactly. That's the biggest, clearest, fucking sorest thumb. And the only question on your mind, why did they redo this? There was no fucking point. God damn it. In that case, out of a possible 2, I can only do justice to the 1994 version and give this one a big fat fucking 0. A big gaping asshole is what this shit gets. 2024's The Crow. It is absolute trash. I'm sorry if there's only one scene that's somewhat decent in an opera house where everybody's getting the limbs chopped off for like a good 5 minutes. There's a chase scene where he jumps windshield first into the car. He's struggling like he does throughout the fucking movie to even know how to throw a punch. But meanwhile, because he's got the invincibility cheat code on, he can't die, so he can take all the damage possible. Punches, stabbing, shooting, bullets, glass, whatever they fucking put into him, he's able to just spit it out and be like, oh, reset, bro, cheat, ha ha ha, whatever. And survive, getting run over by trucks, getting dropped from heights and shit. He's surviving. And he can't fight for shit, but somehow he's supposed to be a superhero, a protector of the realms, of the other world and the afterlife. I don't understand. So, of course, again, this shit gets a big fat fucking 0 out of 2. Please don't watch this shit. I'm begging you. And as it shows in the cover art, and why you should skip it. 2024 is The Crow. Thank you for tuning in today for the live version of this. Who This Been Watching? 2024 is The Crow. Unfortunately starring Bill Skarsgård, who I don't hate. Usually ain't bad, but he made a bad choice picking this movie to be in it or involved whatsoever in it. And formerly known as Twigs, which was very painful to watch as a co-starring lead female actress. I can say, with no with no presumptionness that she is a bad actress. This is point positive proof that she is. Keep her away from the fucking movies. Get her away from the big screen. Even if she got to act in drama club in a local high school. No, don't even offer that shit. Just get her away. If she's got a great voice, though. She can sing. And she does put that on display in the movie. Let her sing. Let her make some more music. Because she was already a musician. I don't know why they fucking thought she'd make sense in this movie to make it biracial, of course, because diversity, inclusion, when the first Shelly was white. And there was no problem with that, maybe because she was a brunette. If they would have made her blonde and shit and they just had to recast and make her, biracial, black, curly haired and shit, whatever. Cute girl, not a great actress, decent singer. Stick to that shit. Stick to your strengths. That's it for today's version, today's episode, of Who This Been Watching. 2024 is The Crow. Bad fucking time in the movies. Don't stream it. Don't even legally download it. Don't do this to yourself. This hour and 51 minutes of fucking absolute shit that's called The Crow. That's the reboot of the fucking Crow of all things. Come on, they could have left it alone.
Yo, it's over. All right, it's over. It's over. Move the mic. Move the mic.
Thank you.
All right.